I really like the steady multi-day, 6-day grind back up after Microsoft attempted to break down. And really what I'm looking for now is a push above 376, a breakout of the hourly time frame from last week's pivot high. I'm looking for a breakout above 376 with volume and time spent above, and that will be my signal and entry for a long. If that occurs, I'm going to look to get long with a stop set at the low of day intraday once I'm long. My first target will be a move up into 380, where I plan to cover most of my position and trail my stop using higher lows on the hourly time frame. Now, with something like Microsoft, I'm going to set some alerts around this key breakout level around 376. And I'm going to keep it on the radar in the coming days or even weeks if it continues to consolidate and set up further. And once entered, like I said, I plan on staying in this position for multiple days, up to 3 days if I enter this week. Now, the next setup that I really like is an A-firm. This is now lowering my time frame from the daily down to the hourly. And A-firm, this is a really reactive idea that I have, and I'm only looking to get short this if it breaks the uptrend, which is right around here. As you can see, we're in a very clean uptrend. If it breaks this uptrend and we're able to hold below it and it doesn't reclaim, then I'm going to be looking to get short versus the high of day, and I'm going to be looking for an intraday swing short opportunity, targeting a move towards 46, so targeting a move right in this region right here. And if we get that move intraday where we snap this brief uptrend on the hourly, multi-day uptrend on the hourly chart, and we get a push back down into 46s, I'm going to be looking to cover half of my position, and I'd look to trail the rest of my position using the 15-minute chart lower highs, or potentially using the intraday VWAP, depending on what the downtrend intraday looks like. If the stock were to close weak, if we were to close if we tap 46, we close near 46, or we close even near 45, and we close weak in the lower 20% of the intraday range, I will look to take my position overnight and hold for one more day of continuation potentially. Obviously, I'll only do that once I've covered half of my position, locked in profit, and taken some of the risk off of the table. Now, my last two names that I'm coming into this week prepared for are in two recent reverse split stocks. So that's going to be in Mullen, and two recent reverse split stocks, I should also add, that have a history of dilution and quite consistent dilution. Both of these stocks, Mullen and Gamble, offered really good opportunities on the short side for me on Friday. So I'm going to be looking to stick around in these stocks. I'm looking to use levels from day one and day two for potential reshort if they can pop back in to those levels of supply and offer good risk reward. So for example, in Mullen, I would love a push right back into 1050 area for starters in towards 11. All right, this is a potential level of supply and breakdown level from the previous day. So I'm looking for first a push into 1050, 11. Thereafter, if that doesn't fail, I'd like to look for a push then closer to 12s. And then obviously what would become the 3-day VWAP today, acting around 1340s, developing still into the 3-day VWAP. That would be a key level and really the final line in the sand for me, looking for a failed move higher to get short. But once one of those moves push into a level that I'm looking for, and we actually get confirmation in terms of fail and a lower high, that's when I would look to get short. And I would look to cover half of my position near Friday's low and low around 9s in the low 9s, and hold the rest for a swing trade. And I'll trail my stop down to 10, and then I'll trail it accordingly using the hourly time frame for a potential multi-day trade there. And then for Gamble, the plan would be very similar as well. There's some supply near 750 and 8 throughout the day on Friday. So there's supply on this pop 750, push up closer to 8. There was some good resistance in supply. So I'm looking for a quick push and Gamble into those levels to get short versus the high of the intraday. And once that's confirmed, like Mullen, I would look to cover half of my position, take some risk off into the mid-low 6s, and I'd look to hold the rest for a further day or two of continuation if we continue to stick in a downtrend and all pops continue to get sold. And that is my plan for this week. Good luck.
I took in NVDA from August 17th. It's an opening range breakout trade. I'm revisiting it and going back through it because recently I've been dramatically narrowing my playbook in order to stop over trading and to become more consistent. And this is one of the trades that I would be focusing on. So I thought it'd be helpful to get feedback and just really dive deeper into it. So starting off with the trade strategy. So the trade criteria to get me interested would be elevated R-vol with a news catalyst, gapping up at least 3%, institutional ownership above 50%. Which will help with some of the buying off the open. I want to see institutions piling in. A strong pre-market level, in this case I use pre-market high. I want to see the stock break above pre-market high with volume off the open. And for this particular setup, this is before NVIDIA had earnings, 2 days before. So it helps in my book to have the stock have a history of getting bought up before earnings releases. And then, like I said, buying pressure. And with the opening range breakout, I want that opening drive to hit a resistance level, have a slight pullback on shallow volume, and then get back above that resistance level, all above opening print. So looking at the entry criteria, what actually gets me into the trade, I'm getting in when it breaks above the opening range, right above that high. It's important for me to make note that I shouldn't chase the entry, and it's important to get size on this initial entry. Places to add then would be slight pullbacks on lower volume, only at support levels. And then reasons to sell, I would be selling into resistance, mistake on that, selling when stock breaks the uptrend from lower day, and then this has to be after 10 a.m., and then I want to get flat when it crosses below the 21 EMA. And that's a signal of momentum shifting. From buying to selling.
I like how you're working on limiting your playbook, being more specific about it. When we do this with other traders, RVOL is a very important attribute to be looking at. Pass on the trades. We talked about this in your daily report card last night. Passing on the trades where RVOL isn't elevated is very helpful. And then volume into moves is very important to see to confirm that there's a big order behind your idea.
Okay, so just doing a quick review of what was happening in the markets. So this was the start of a week. In the previous week, SPY was right below a record high, Q was right below an important 272 level, and overall tech was showing relative weakness. We just had some solid unemployment numbers. Claims were coming in for the first time below 1 million since the pandemic started. In addition, there was no progress with the coronavirus relief talks, which was something that at first the market was seeming to care about and have an impact, but later on sentiment was very bullish despite any concerns with that. And then we're seeing some increase in tensions with the U.S. and China. Not too important, but something just to have in the back of your mind. And then the markets are gapping up going into the day of the trade.
If you want
Looking at SPY, important to note, this is in the summer, so we're seeing lower volume, which is due to seasonality. Not as many people are at their desks and putting money to work, and we are trading right below the all-time high. Important on the 5-day, 5-minute, we're holding above 335, which has been a support level, and we have been seeing some inside days from 335 to 338. So SPY is kind of ranging. NVDA is an important tech stock, a major tech stock, so important to also look at Qs. The major levels were 270, 272, and we're closing right below 272 going into this day. And overall, tech has, since the March lows, tech's been relatively strong compared to SPY. So then the 5-day, 5-minute, buyer supported 272 the end of last week, which was Thursday, and then we just had inside day right below, closing right below 272. So the fundamentals for NVIDIA, they have earnings on Wednesday, 2 days after this trade, and this is an important earnings because it's the first time their data center segment sales are geared to outpace their video game sales, which shows a full transformation of the company that started as video games and now have gone into the chip business. They have had some price target raises from Susquehanna and Oppenheimer, the most notable ones, the highest ones, and into this they were gapping up to an all-time high. Another piece of news that's also bullish is they were in talks to buy a chipmaker ARM, which is a SoftBank-backed company.
I really like how the data center sales are outpacing the video games right now, and so the street is looking at this as a transition, different company. That's going to potentially bring in more buyers, different buyers, more long-term holders. Really good to be pointing that out. Fundamentals of this company are getting a lot better.
So just mentioning some of the metrics, their ATR, their average true range is 16.5, average volume is 11.4. Another one to mention is institutional ownership, 71%. And not much of a short float at 1.05. On the day of this trade, the R-ball was 29 on the open. Like you mentioned before, it's important to see that be elevated for a breakout trade like this to work. And then the high institutional ownership shows that some institutions could be buying leading up into earnings. And in 2020, NVIDIA has largely outperformed SPY. So something I like to do with all my trades before or after earnings, or just earnings day ones, is look what they did in past earnings. So looking at the week going into earnings, we could see about 4 days before, the stock started getting bought up. And in this earnings, it was similar transformation, important earnings, because this was the first time that the company was starting to see that their data center would become their best segment. And that was when they topped $1 billion in revenue for the first time for that data center segment. So the day before earnings, the stock sold off. Just something to keep in mind. This wasn't the day before earnings, it was 2 before. That's just something to keep in mind. And on this earnings, they had double beat EPS and revenue. Revenue was up 39% year over year, just strong even with the pandemic. And the EPS surprise of the actual compared to consensus was 6.76, which will be interesting moving forward.
And a really good job of being diligent, going back and looking at how this particular stock traded during prior earnings seasons. Love that you're doing that. Love that you're doing that. Something that those that are listening ought to think about how they can incorporate that into their preparation. But very well done there.
Thank you. It helps definitely build conviction and have more context with the trades, which I enjoy. So on a similar note, some technology that you could use. This is just in Python. It's not with our Great Pi, so it is available to people to try out. But this is some code that looks at the week before an earnings. And this right here is downloading all historical earnings. So this is what I'm using to try to see if there is edge in buying a stock a week before earnings based on a particular earnings surprise percentage from the previous earnings. And just to show some of my findings for NVIDIA. So I took the earnings where the past earnings had a positive earnings per share surprise. And then this is a bunch of the charts to see what they did in the week leading up to earnings with the last date, the day before earnings. As you can see, not everyone increased, but for what I analyzed, you can see that it does have a history of getting bought up into earnings, and particularly the days before the final day before the earnings. So this is a project I'm continuing to work on for a possible swing trade in the future. But yeah, that's some data to collect. And then
I love how you're doing that. And so what's great about that is you're thinking outside the box. You're thinking about how to do something a little bit differently. You're taking what you've learned and trying to put it together in a way that makes sense to you. And remember, all the trades don't have to work. You're just looking for some edge. And so,
Yes.
if you find something with some edge, that's great. That can be built into a system in of itself.
Yes, you're definitely right there. So yeah, excited to keep exploring that. So moving on to some other technology, a lot of my trading is based on how I can use technology and be alerted to setups. So these are a couple of filters that I use every day that would help for a particular setup, specific and particular setup like NVIDIA. So on the left is a list of stocks I watch and just the R vol they have on that day, and then the ATR related move that they have made. So for an opening range breakout, this is an easy way to gauge relative strength or weakness, as well as see what stocks are making 10% or a fourth ATR move off the open, which could be potential good opening range breakouts. The second one is just an R vol that shows the highest R vol out of stocks for the day. And then moving on to the last one, all the way to the right, this is a similar filter and alert as the one all the way to the left, but it shows for every stock based on certain criteria who's doing the highest ATR move in relation to their own ATR, and then the lowest to the downside, highest to the downside.
Yeah, and look, what I'm seeing so far already is you are showing unusual diligence. Not going to see the diligence often like what you're showing us. Not going to see thinking creatively and trying to do something a little bit different inside of good trading principles like what you're showing us. Not going to see the use of technology well the way that you are doing it. Those are three things, particularly for the newer people that are listening, those are three things that are standing out right away right now.
Just from the daily chart, you can see it's been incredibly strong. After breaking out above 320, it's basically been completely straight up all the way to 460 in a very short time. And on that breakout above 320, we saw high volume, confirming it. Moving on to the hourly, just recently it broke out of a consolidation above that 470 level. And above 460 in general is bullish, which was a swing high from early August. The 5-day, 5-minute shows this a little more in detail, a little closer. But my levels going into the day were support of 465, 468, 470, 472. Resistance levels was that pre-market high that I mentioned in my trade variables, which was 476, 480, 482, 485, and 486.
Superior here with your diligence, with your technical analysis preparation.
Definitely helps. I've noticed when I have timeframes aligned and I have more context, I trade better as well. One thing to note with these resistance levels is the stock is gapping up into all-time high territory, so technically there is no previous overhead supply. So every seller and every resistance level would be organic to that day. But these are some levels based on ATR moves. And then going into reading the tape, I'll preface it, this was actually the day that Think or Swim was down, so I frantically got up a chart. A couple hours after, I made sure I had a backup system if this does happen again, which did come in handy when it did. So we're looking at that bottom chart. So the stock makes an opening drive, and we see it hit resistance around 477.50 was the high. So I'm watching to see if we could retake this level. So we're coming into 477 now. When it does get above this opening range high, I want to see buying pressure, and I want to see speed on the tape increase, as well as confirmation by volume. So we're now up to 477.50. And we're going to see very quickly, make a quick dip back to 477.23. Now I want to see what happens back at this 477.50, 477.70 level. So there's my entry. Now, if it doesn't move away quickly from price, I'm out, and I'll be out at that opening range high. But we see it quickly breaks through 478, has no trouble there. And we see speed on the tape, it's skipping 20 cents, 30 cents at a time. And that was the first video. And then quickly, I'm just going to show some tape on a pullback that I should have done better capitalizing on. Okay, so it's right here. We're going to be watching this 482 level. I want to see if it's going to be able to hold this level, and if it does get it below, I would not want it to spend a lot of time below this level. So about 10 seconds, we're going to see it dip below. We get to 481.96, quickly rebid back up. We're going to test that same level again. Bid held, holds to the exact cent, and now we make our move back. This was a spot I didn't add on, but noticing that failure to hold below support level and that quick rebid confirmed by speed on the tape after it got back above 42 would be a great pullback spot to add. And you can see it quickly moves to 43. And just to skip ahead, we then continue going higher, all the way to 485.
We suggest people find a way to clip reading the tape examples into their playbooks so they're better and they can learn more from them. And not everybody does it. And another example of superior diligence from you to put it into your playbook trade.
So going into my trade management for this, one thing to notice is that the stock did break above the pre-market high of 476 on the opening drive. So that's a check in my favor. My entry is 3 lots when it breaks above this opening range high. You can see right there. And then I would be risking a move below this opening range high. My first sale would be half a tier into strength on a break above 480 resistance level. And at this point, the stock's moved about 4 points, so about a fourth in ATR as well. For my system, I use ATR and I have it up on this top left corner as a reference point, just to have in the back of my head where I should be taking profits, but then using the resistance levels as my actual places.
Get long 3 lots when the stock breaks above opening range. You're going to have more success when the consolidation after the opening move is longer and tighter. If there was more time that had gone by and it gone sideways a little bit more after the opening drive, the more success you're going to have with a stock like this. My sense is that this is a potential long right here, not 3 lots though, because it doesn't go sideways enough.
So my next sale is then into 482. We see into 482. It has a slight pullback, quickly then continues with the uptrend, but this is a good spot to take off some size. Then I would sell 1 tier into 485. At this point, this is about half an ATR move for the stock. And like I showed on the tape, where I'd like to add would be at this 482.50, 482 level. So going into my trade manager, I want to think about how I do look at trades, and I have this as a support level, this 482.50. So when it pulls back and holds above there, I would add half a tier. But when it continues pulling back, I would want to see how it reacts at this 482 level, and on that quick rebid back up, which confirms strength, couldn't hold below the level, I would like to add back another half a tier.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good consolidation there between that 482 and 484. That's a better consolidation than how you added initially for the 3 tiers.
Definitely right. That could be a good place to get size, where instead it'd be like long 1 tier and then get another one into this area. One thing that's important with these pullbacks is just to be patient and wait for the confirmation of the pullback and have it be at an important level. Where I was a little early on it, at 482.50, I added that because that's a place where it did find support. It was a support level. But however, the add at 482 is even stronger as it holds above the 21 EMA as well as holding that level. So then I would sell half a tier at 46, like I mentioned. And now moving into my reasons to get out, I would sell half of the position when this uptrend from low a day breaks. As you can see, this is a very extended move. As you can see from the distance from VWAP to the high of the day. So at this point, I would want to not have to sit through an entire pullback back to like 42, 44. So I would sell half there and then get flat when it closes below the 21 EMA, which is a signal to me that the momentum is drying up and buying is getting exhausted. So those are my executions.
Just for you to think about in terms of best trades, stock doesn't go down in the open, starts to tick up. To play that first opening drive is something for you to be thinking about right away, right on the open.
Yeah.
Where you got in is fine as a momentum trade. That consolidation, 42, 44, good place to be thinking about. I'm not sure it makes sense. Something for you to think about. And I won't provide a definitive answer. But if you're saying to me, hey, I think something is too steep, and I'm going to wait for something that's too steep to break that downtrend, that's fine. But I would also, if it were me, I would have a system to exit if something got a little bit too parabolic, if it got a little bit too hot. So I wouldn't just look for it to break a downtrend that was too steep. I'd also have a system where I was selling into something that's too strong.
That's a very good idea that I should think about. I did mention this. We had the volume increase when it rejected 490 at this level. So that could be a spot that would show that overextension. So then just going into my trade review, I asked myself a couple questions to facilitate the review, just stuff to think about. So the first thing is, with this trade, what way did the stock trade that made it successful for me? So the buying was clear off the open. It respected levels very well. And this setup doesn't have a lot of drawdown included. Buyers step in immediately, and I'm quickly in the money, which just puts me in the driver's seat and tells me that the setup's right away. And then the specific setup, the opening range breakout, this is a setup where I can nail the entry, and I'm getting prices at some of the best of the day. And like I said, to reiterate, it's very clear when it's working. And it's also a simpler setup, I would say, for newer guys like myself to really capitalize on. And then aspects to add. One thing I want to really start doing more of is thinking through the psychology of how people are long and short, how they're positioned before and after earnings reactions. And I would like to find a way to quantify institutional ownership to see if that could have an edge with these particular setups, to see how many funds are getting into a position or getting out for weak setups. And then I'm going to continue working on that code for a potential swing trade. And then with the tape, I can definitely improve on where to add on that pullback. And with this setup, the main areas to use the tape would be the entry and the ads, as well as, like you said, if I do include selling it to strength a little better. And it's just important for me to really continue watching tape and dialing into these key areas, inflection areas.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I really liked at the beginning how you really knew what you were looking for. Very systematic about what you wanted to see for the particular trade. Very high diligence. for how you laid the trade out, how you reviewed the trade in terms of your technical analysis, putting the tape into that, really superior creative thinking for maybe how you're going to use data, and then even in your post-review, how you're thinking about, you might want to actually look into how the options were priced and how the options betting was right before the earnings. That's something that might be something we can talk about offline if you want. And then, really good use of technology. So, when I see a trade like this, I'm not as concerned about how you traded it or how you did or how much you made. What I'm seeing is really great work being done in a trade you should be practicing. What I'm seeing is the type of work that's just better. It's just better than lots of other traders even here. It's just better. And so I would encourage you to keep building from the diligence in your work, the creative thinking, the use of technology. When you guys are sitting at your seat, I feel this way too. You feel this pressure to jump into something. You feel like, I got to get in. If I don't get in, I'm going to miss the trade. You feel like, I got to be the first person to see something. If I'm not that first person to see something, I'm going to miss the trade, and it's going to run away without me, and I'm going to be miserable, and I'm going to be watching it, and I'm going to have a good idea, and essentially my takeaway is going to be, I didn't react quick enough. And when we review our trades, oftentimes we see that that isn't true. And I want to highlight this point so that you guys aren't thinking that, and that you wait for the setup, and that you wait, we say see it. You can wait to see it. And you can wait for the trade to develop. And just for today, from your ideas before the open, using your ideas before the open, the 5 top stocks that we mentioned, you all could have waited for the setup. You didn't need to jump in, feel pressure to jump in. And look, I understand that feeling. I mean, you're sitting there and you're like, you feel like you've got to be that first person in. And that is not in your best interests to feel that way. And it gets in the way of good trading. And so let's use your words from today, from the open, from literally a couple hours ago, and just go over 5 quick examples and show what we mean by this. So Scott, you had a really good idea in ML, right? Bad news, potentially, you weren't sure, but potentially bad news in that people are having some seizures from vaping. I don't vape, but not yet. Maybe I should. Right, you said astutely and with savvy, hey, let's watch MO. All right, and so we come into today, and you thought maybe, hey, this will get hit a little bit, and it could be a good short. And if you were just watching what was happening, you could have waited. And so a little bit of a move to the upside, can't get above 56.20, and then it trades in this range, and it's trading above VWAP. It's trading between 55.90 to 56, 55.90 to 56, and then it finally gets below VWAP, and it has a pretty decent down move. Okay, so it's 10:30. You had a good idea, definitely something to watch. It gets below there, and then now you want to say to yourself, we finally got below VWAP. I want to see what happens when it starts to go back up. First thing that comes into my mind when I see something like that is I want to see it go back up, make a lower high. I want to see it hold below VWAP. I want to see an unimpressive move to the upside. And if I see that, then I want to short it against that consolidation area into the up move. So, we make this move down here. This gets my attention. I want to have alerts set below VWAP. Now I want to watch the up move, not impressive. And it literally doesn't get above 82 cents. And you can start to short against the whole number and see how you'll do. I do think one thing about that stock is you want to quickly look to see what RVL was in that stock to see if it's worth trading. But whether this is going to work or not, you got a whole bunch of flurry between 9:30 and 10:30. You didn't have to do anything. And later, it can set up for a decent move. Okay, let's take a look at AMD. Good idea from you guys this morning. Thought it might be strong. SMH really strong today. AMD opens up. Has a little bit of an up move. Gets a little bit above VWAP. First move is up on pretty decent volume. Has a nice move to the upside around that 2840 area, and then busts above there again on some pretty good volume. All right, and so for those of you who like to trade opening drive strategies, okay, doesn't really trade much below 28, goes up to 2830, doesn't really go down lower, and you've got multiple opportunities to play for this drive. So you can trade it against, it's not trading below 28. You can play an opening drive strategy of it didn't really go down. All right, so it doesn't get below 28. I can see that. I can use that as support. Doesn't really make any sort of a down move after its first move up. Has pretty good volume right away. All right, and is never really going down. Has a decent pull in right here around 10 o'clock. And continues to find higher highs. All right, so good opportunities to use your opening drive strategy. All right, GME. Actually, I want to watch the tape back in GME. Did anyone tape that? I want to go and take a look at that together. I mean, really good example of reading the tape, getting you into position. So we open up, ton of selling at 9, 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 ton of selling at 9. We talked about how there was a negative catalyst in this today. It wasn't trading below 9. It was trading down. It was down over 10%. not a lot to like about this company overall, but it's down a lot, and it's going to be in play. And we want to be open-minded to long and short. And so, right on the open, 9 was just the level. There was so much volume done at 9. There was a huge seller at 9, and there was somebody paying the offer really quickly. Really good example of going back and looking at your tape. The way they were paying the offer at 9 generally is a sign that it's going to lift. The velocity at which they were paying the offer at 9, the fact that they were continually paying the offer at 9 and not really trying to buy it on the bid or trying to buy it in between, they were just paying the offer at 9, paying the offer at 9, paying the offer at 9 really fast. But it couldn't hold above 9. So you're not sure what to do, not sure what to do. Finally holds above 9, it's a buy. Can't get above 9, can't get above 9. Finally holds above 9, you see it. You're seeing it on the tape. You're waiting for the setup. And now you can play for a nice opening drive as well. Stock goes all the way up to 950, which is a big move for a $9 stock. You had a good pull into VWAP opportunity here at 10.05, and it can play for a little bit of a follow through. You could see that opportunity. Play. Another good example from this morning that you guys teed up. The idea was, hey, we like this opportunity. We want to buy it in a pull-in. It had an opportunity. I made the mistake of getting into this a little bit too early the first time. So I know well where the buy opportunity was. So we talk a lot about using a capitulation pattern to get long. Capitulation pattern is a wick down on high volume. And so 52 was the area I was buying it against. And then look what we had. We got below 52. We had the capitulation pattern. Heavy volume, huge wick to the downside. All right, buy it against the bottom of this wick. So you can buy this against 51.40, 51.45, hit out below the low. The low is what, 51.23? All right, so we get this capitulation pattern. And the real buy, if depending on how you trade, is this close of this candle right here at 10.05. Guys who are more aggressive are going to buy 51.40 against the lows. Depends on how you want to trade. Gets a little bit above VWAP, finally for the first time, and has it not moved back to where it came from. But you can, and even if you didn't want to trade that capitulation pattern, you can trade this. Go back to when it crosses over VWAP. You can trade this here at 10.15, or you can trade this at 10.20 when it crosses above VWAP. All right, OPTT. I think this is really a really good example. Everybody's watching it. You can feel the trepidation of missing out on the move down. I'm not going to say we know it's going to go down because we never really know, but we know it's going to go down, right? Okay, it's going to go down. And we know it's going to go back down to, we know in like 2 weeks it's going to be like 5, right? And it was trading at 16. We pretty much know that. It's getting squeezed, getting squeezed, getting squeezed. And we were having a conversation on the desk. It's at a terrible price. I want to short it. I'm really missing out on an opportunity to get particularly big, but you don't have to. You can wait until the backside gets put in. You can wait for that. You do. It was very frustrating to try and trade this on the front side all the way up to 16, right? It still isn't even below VWAP. And so you could, if you're trading the stock, first of all, you could decide not to trade it at all on day 1. And you could decide, I'm only going to trade these things day 3 or day 4 or day 2 towards the end of the day when a clear backside is put in. Okay? You can wait for finally for there to be limit down on day 1. That tends to be something that gets people going. You could wait for a very clear lower high on day 1 with a tight stop to trade against. Okay? You can wait for real heaviness on the tape that you finally see and trade against that level. But what you don't have to do is say, oh, it's up too much, I'm going to short it at 10. Yeah, it's up too much at 10, 100%. It's up too much at 10. And then you could say it's up too much at 11, let me short it at 11. Those are the things you want to kind of stay away from until you become really experienced and you have a different strategy that you're using. But that's a hard strategy. That's an advanced strategy. And you can wait. You can just sort of sit and wait for this thing to really put in the backside. So that's just for today. 5 examples where you want to just be waiting and don't feel anxious about getting in. Summary. You can wait for your trades to develop. You don't have to feel the pressure to jump into a trade. Often our top traders can pinpoint 2 or 3 trades that made their month. Waiting is trading. Review your best trades and honestly ask yourself as a trader, whether you needed to rush, predict, or force any of your most profitable trading ideas.